pledge allegiance to the flag of the United
States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. At this time, we will have student and program recognition, and tonight we will have Rebecca Baker, our school nurse.
Just to quickly go over it. We do this once a month as a school health report, goes over everything that we've done for the month, just to highlight a few things. We go over the number of screenings that we've done, how much medication we've passed, visits to the clinic. We're averaging around anywhere between 60 and 70 visits a day in the clinic. That's medications, treatments, sick, injure, all of those. And that is about where we've been in the last 2 years. So since we've been in one building, it is up from when we were not all in one building. We are finished with our first round of hearing and vision screenings. We've screened around a little over 900 hearing and a little over 1,100 vision. We've referred about 133 vision students and about 26 hearing referrals. So we're starting to see some of those come back. It's good to see when, the screenings work and kids get glasses and, the parents don't even know. So the screenings is a lot of work, but it does pay off. Also gave you guys a snapshot of the last 2 years of COVID summaries, just for FYI. Currently this year we're sitting at like 44 students and 18 staff members, and we are still using the 5-day quarantine procedure. In other news, for staff, we have applied for a wellness grant through the EPC program. We're waiting to hear back from that. That'll offer some wellness activities for all the staff once a month from here on out for the rest of the year. So hopefully we get approved. We had to apply for that, and then they'll approve each activity. There's a certain amount of money. I think we're eligible for about $7,000. Wow. So we're just waiting to hear back from them if we get approval. Mobile mammogram will be here again this year for our staff to take advantage of. We also have the flu shots on site. That'll be this week. This is Wednesday. That the staff and families can participate, and that's free for them. We have a nurse Erica is going to DC in a couple weeks, so we'll have coverage for that. 6th grade camp is back this spring in March, and we'll be sending a nurse for that as well. And now we're coming up on Christmas, believe it or not, so we'll work with Brian Coffey and working on like Christmas referrals for the students that need it, and we'll work with the Lions Club to still offer food baskets for the families in the area that need that. That's basically a referral basis, so if any of the teachers know of anybody that needs things, they'll send us an email and we'll reach out to the parents that way. Okay. And they usually meet with Brian Coffey and fill out an application, and we get them the help that they need. So that's pretty much what's going on in the nursing world. So thanks.
Thanks, Becca.
Hey, Nurse Baker, any questions for her? I know she and Ms. Nurse Brown have been really busy the last 2 years, and so we were able to come up for air and come to a meeting here. So we certainly thank her and Erica, and even our Warren County nurse that was assigned to us through the commissioner's good graces and took care of a lot of the burden off them. But they were certainly had their hands full the last 2 years during COVID, and we certainly thank them. And so now they can just handle the regular stuff like, flu and vomiting and all the other fun stuff that they get to deal with. So we certainly thank them. Thanks, Rebecca.
At this time, we will open the floor to visitors' comments. Doesn't look like we have any comments this evening, so we'll move on to Mr. Bassler's Treasurer's Report.
Thank you, Mrs. McIntosh. First non-action item is just a reminder of the Capitol Conference that's coming up. I believe there's 5 of us going to Columbus. That's November 13th through 15th. And I'll be sending more of an agenda type stuff to you. I'm sure we'll meet up on Sunday somewhere, probably up in Columbus, but be able to send out more of an agenda type situation in weeks to come. So with that, I'll move on to my action items, and I need approval for our minutes from the last regularly scheduled board meeting, which was September the 26th.
Can I get a motion to approve? First by Mrs. Milligan, second by Mrs. Miller. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Milligan?
Yes.
Mrs. Miller?
Yes.
Mrs. McIntosh?
Yes.
Mrs. Morris? And secondly, I have approval for the financial report for the month. Sometimes I feel bad when I sound like a broken record, but no real surprises. We're moving along. Again, the beginning of the year is a heavy year, or the heaviest part of the year as far as expenses. We're paying for all the things to get school started with all that. So, again, nothing new that's outside of our regular expectations. Just a little heavier month for the month of September, but that's was expected. So if you don't have any questions, I need approval for the financial report.
Can I have a motion to approve? First by Mrs. Morris. Second. Mrs. Milligan. Second by Mrs. Milligan. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Morris?
Yes.
Mrs. Milligan?
Yes.
Mrs. Miller?
Yes.
Mrs. McIntosh?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Bassler, and we'll move on to Dr. Bell's superintendent's report.
Thank you, Ms. McIntosh. For non-action items, district update, we finished our first grading period and started our second grade period seamlessly with no interruptions and no problems, concerns. It is that weird time of year. I'm sure Jimmy's got to be happy that we've got the system we have, because it's a part time of the year where you need the heat on in the morning and the air conditioning on in the afternoon. And with this self-contained system, it kind of does its own thing. We don't have to worry about that, so we like that. So with the end of the fall quarter, we also have the end of the fall activities. Volleyball has a game tomorrow night. They'll be playing Summit Country Day at Norwood at 6 p.m. Cross Country has their sectionals this weekend. I believe it's at VOA. Is that right, John? Yeah. And then we've got a football playoff game Friday night versus Valley View at Valley View. A couple other things happening is November 11th, 12th, and 13th right here in this auditorium. Quentin and the group will be putting on fall play, Pride and Prejudice, 7 o'clock on Friday and Saturday and 2 o'clock on Sunday. Also, to let you know that the band, we were notified today that the band achieved a superior rating at the OMEA local marching band event, and they qualified for the state marching finals. And as soon as we get that information, it'll either be the 29th or 30th or the 5th or the 6th. We've not been notified yet. So as soon as Mr. Oliver gets that information, I will pass that along. It will be at either Hilliard, Bradley, Medina, or Piqua. We're voting for Piqua if we can do that. And then the last thing for non-action is Hall of Fame nominations. The voting has been, or the nomination has been extended until November 15th. That information is on the website, so if you have someone that you'd like to have nominated for the Hall of Fame, please get on the website and follow the nomination procedure there. So that is all the non-action items that I have at this time.
Thank you.
Action items, B1, general district business. We've got approval, second reading of policies, a list of all those policies that we had the first readings last month, and so this will be our second reading and approving the policies.
Can I get a motion to approve? First by Mrs. Milligan. Second by Mrs. Morris. May I have a roll call, Mr. Bassler?
Mrs. Milligan? Yes. Mrs. Morris? Yes. Mrs. McIntosh?
Yes.
Mrs. Miller?
Yes.
Thank you so much. Item 2 is classified employment. Following, would like recognition to approve the following. Kelly Miller as kindergarten educational aide pending background check. Approve Stephanie Hodge as sub-kitchen worker effective 10/5/22. Approve Jessica King as sub-educational aide, clerical, and bus aide. Approve Greg Gainey as sub-bus driver effective 10/12/22. And approve Susan Nichols as sub-bus driver effective 10/13/22.
Can I get a motion to approve?
So moved.
First by Mrs. Miller.
Second.
Second by Mrs. Milligan. Can I get a roll call, please, Mr. Bassler?
Mrs. Miller?
Yes.
Mrs. Milligan?
Yes.
Mrs. Morris?
Yes.
Mrs. McIntosh?
Yes.
Thank you very much. My last item is item 3, supplemental employment. If I could get you to approve the following. Brandy Osborne is after-school tutor. Penny Stewart, after-school tutor. Robin Mobley is after-school tutor. Kelsey Shanahan is after-school tutor. Pam Musi is after-school tutor. And Diane Johnson is after-school tutor.
Can I have a motion to approve, please? Which one? Okay. Mrs. Milligan first, Mrs. Morris second. Mr. Batsler, can I get roll call, please?
Mrs. Milligan?
Yes.
Mrs. Morris? Mrs. Miller?
Yes.
Mrs. McIntosh?
Yes.
Thank you very much, and that's all the items that I have for your approval tonight.
Thank you, Dr. Bell. At this time, Board of Education reports, for legislative report, we don't have anything to report at this time. Miami Valley CTC is business as usual, and we will be looking for a new rep starting in January. So as a board, we need to discuss that. Any old business you would like to report? Any new business anyone would like to report? Okay, at this time, I would like to call for adjournment. Mr. Bassler?
I need a first and a second.
Oh, I need, yeah, excuse me,
I'd like
I'm
to
rusty at
hurry up and
this.
do it.
Can I have a motion to adjourn the meeting? First by Mrs. Milligan, second by Mrs. Miller. Can I have a roll call this time?
Mrs. Milligan? Yes. Mrs. Miller?
Yes.
Mrs. Morris? Yes. Mrs. McIntosh?
Yes,
Time is 6:12.
6:12. Thank you for attending tonight.